Hello, hello. We're here. We're doing this live show. We're doing this thing. Welcome, and we got quite a bit to talk about on this show. Some some interesting situations here. AEW has announced their stadium show in Texas, which I didn't believe was actually going to happen. I thought they was a little bit smarter than that. But then again, I have a conspiracy theory, and I have to admit it is a conspiracy theory. And it, it, we'll talk about it when we get there. Um, We're going to talk about Mark Henry and Bradshaw on their podcast, or well, on Bradshaw's podcast, kind of defend the events. And we're going to talk about Eric Bischoff's new job because all the AEW fans are making fun of him for changing careers at this point, or changing careers again at this point. So these things must be discussed. There's probably going to be some other things that's going to pop up. I did have a video planned to talk about Jesse Ventura and Hulk Hogan. I scrapped it because it ended up with me yelling about unions for 25 minutes. And I decided not to do that to people anymore. If you want to know my views on unions and Jesse Ventura and Hulk Hogan, I think I did videos on that stuff before. I mean, come on. AJ3, how you doing this evening? Thank you, sir, for stopping by, or madam, whichever one it is. The week is almost over. When it's a Thursday live stream, that means the week is almost over. It means we can get back to relaxing. Well, I can anyway, because I don't work weekends. All In is next week. So are you guys excited for All In? I don't really care about All In. It's unfortunate. I was more excited for the joint last year. But I guess we should start our show after. Well, I guess we might as well start now. I don't want to stay up longer than I have to. Let's start with the cover story. Mark Henry and Bradshaw defend Vince McMahon. Now, before we get into this, there was an absurd story, absolutely absurd story, that came out. I think it was yesterday. Well, it might have been yesterday morning. But I'm sorry, it came out August the 14th. I think it came out in the morning or the afternoon. That claimed that Vince McMahon's health had deteriorated, according to Linda McMahon. And I looked at it. I tried to find the source of it. Once I realized that the source of the story was somebody who claimed that they heard Linda say this, I was like, I'm not paying that no attention. There's no reason to talk about fourth person stories. It just literally is dumb. Okay. So I didn't bother with it. Then the lawyers came on and said, nope, Vince is fine. And everybody went back to, Vince is fine. He's almost 80 years old, but his health is deteriorating. All of our healths are deteriorating. The guy's 80. What can you do? Apparently, there's still a slugfest going on between Dr. Coulter and Janelle Grant. Apparently, now Dr. Coulter is now officially the celebrity doctor, and Peak Wellness is officially the facility that she was sent to. I don't know why she just didn't put this in the original document, but it seems like they're doing drip for the purposes of keeping this in the media. So Dr. Coulter ended up filing for discovery. He wants Janelle Grant to turn over all documentation that she has, and all documentation that includes things about him. It's just getting really ugly. So don't think I haven't been paying attention to that stuff. It's just that I don't think it's relevant. I follow the Vince McMahon stuff. I don't want to get into all the side quests with Scott Coker. Scott Coker. That's the guy who runs Bellator. What is the guy's name? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, let's get into this Mark Henry JBL bit. So Mark Henry went on Stories with Briscoe and JBL's podcast. And Mark Henry says that Vince is going through a tough time with all the stuff that happened recently. He says he never saw none of that, he heard no negativity or anything like that. Then he says people were telling him that he was being insensitive and that people suffered. He says, yeah, but some of those people y'all talking about, their suffering got worse when the money ran out. Like, where was the suffering when they were getting BMWs and millions of dollars? Did that pacify the suffering? Because if you are suffering, you should suffer all the time, right? Nothing should get in the way of that. I don't know. I just come from a different time. Now, JBL is going to double down on this, but this is just, let's just stop right here for a second. Mark Henry is saying things that are insensitive, but are true. And some people don't want to hear things that are insensitive, but true. You know, I think we need to, if we had common sense in our legal system, people filing lawsuits 5 years, 6 years, or whatever afterwards. I know this one's only like, 4 years or whatever. Something happens and they take money repeatedly and they ask for more money. And then they get mad when they don't get more money. Those kind of things would be, those kinds of lawsuits would be thrown in the shredder, you know? And I'm not saying this is completely without merit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this situation is false, because again, we don't have all the information yet. But there's always something for one party to lose and not much for the other party to lose. In these situations, it's almost always the rich and quote unquote rich and powerful person whose name gets stuck in the media, and everybody else just kind of dogpiles them. There's never any accountability on the side of the quote unquote victim. You know, it's never a question of, is all of this not just made up, but exaggerated? Is it all hyperbole? And if you ask that question, then people claim that you're being insensitive. People will claim that you're being mean. They'll claim that you're a misogynist. But they don't realize that people do this stuff literally all the time. You know, our legal system is chock full of people who are engaging in hyperbole in the legal system, not just in rape cases, but in accidental slip and falls. You know, he slipped on a stair or something like that. Maybe he twisted his ankle. He comes in with a walking boot and a neck brace, talking about how he lost $28,000 in wages, and the guy's, he doesn't make that much money. How he can't look at stairs anymore because he's got such emotional distress. And those things kind of get factored into the law instead of just thrown in the garbage. You know, we expect, like, the stuff that people try to claim causes them emotional damage. We send people to war, right? Like, we send people to war where they watch their friends get blown to pieces and shot in the face and die. And we take into account, man, that sucks. But nobody ever just says, think about the emotional damage that a soldier has to go through. Think about the emotional damage a police officer has to go through if they have to go into a house and see a 7-year-old baby shot laying on the floor or something. Or they have to listen to a woman talk about her rape stories. We don't talk about that when we talk about people who literally get involved with the grit and the grime of society. We don't take into account their emotional state. If you see a police officer, like the police officer that shot Sonya Massey, right? We don't take into account his emotional state. We don't say, well, he's a scaredy cat, or he might have been burned as a kid and he had some kind of trauma. That's why he was scared of hot water, which is all stupid as fuck. We don't take that into account. We only take this stuff into account sometimes. When we can find out that it's a special occasion that somebody's emotional damage actually matters. I personally think that if you work in police or you work in the military, you should be mandated to see a psychiatrist, because you probably see some really screwed up stuff, and it does change who you are. I haven't even been in a situation like that, but just working in stuff like mental hospitals or group homes, you see really bad things. Social workers and different people like that, you see and you read really bad things. And sometimes you are verbally abused by people. I was verbally abused today. Nobody asked me about my emotional state. When I was about to give away too much information. Let's just say I was injured. Nobody cared about my emotional state. They thought they cared about me physically, but nobody cared about my emotional state. Right? Nobody was like, well, maybe you're scared and maybe you're frightened now or whatever. Nobody cares about that stuff. Now, granted, they care about more about it when it comes to women than it comes from men. But when we talk about people's emotional states and their suffering, etc., we need to take into account that maybe we're supposed to, for starters, in this situation or in all situations, we're trying to figure out if the event even occurred first. All right? That's the first thing. Before we even start talking about emotional damage, did the event even occur? Okay? That's the first thing, and that's really where we should be. But everybody jumps to the emotional argument. We need to be more emotional. We need to be more caring. And then we start thinking, we forget that sometimes people get involved in these things because it's beneficial to them. And we act like they don't, which is always a problem for me. We think just because I wouldn't make such a decision, that other people wouldn't make such decisions. Oh, who would want to have sex with 70-some-odd-year-old Vince McMahon? If she's being paid to, pretty much any young woman, because they do it all the time. Why are we acting like we live in a world where that stuff doesn't happen? If she's getting gifts, which we know that she was, that incentivizes her to have sex with him. So let's, for starters, focus on whether these events, she was actually raped, let's say. And then we can start talking about how emotionally damaging that could be. Because guess what? Getting raped is emotionally damaging. Or we can all just get caught up in like a mattress girl situation or a Jussie Smollett situation where somebody goes on TV and they cry about something that did not happen. And they start talking about the emotional damage and all this kind of stuff of things that did not happen because they're manipulating you. They're using tears and sad language. And when you're reading a lawsuit, and this is the important thing, everybody needs to realize you are reading a lawsuit. It was the exact same thing with the Ashley Massaro stuff. When you are reading a lawsuit, they are incentivized to write things in excruciating detail, use as vulgar language as possible without, of course, being over the top, because the point of it is to, one, if this goes public or this lingers too long in the public, people are going to talk about it and they're going to think negatively about you. And two, if I say these things now, it's going to incentivize you to pay me to go away. Now, sometimes we start asking important questions like, man, did this thing even occur? And then we find out later that it did occur. The Puff Daddy situation, we don't know exactly how far it went, but we know that she was abused. It was on video. And some people believed it even without the video. Other people need to have the video. So now it's on video. Nobody can deny it. Now we can start talking about emotional damage. That we hope that she's, taken care of, and we hope that she's in a better place now. Because what she went through is legitimately awful. I think reflexive sympathy is not real sympathy. What it is an attempt to virtue signal. I think everything should be met with a certain level of doubt. You can't put anything past anybody, but there should be a specific level of doubt. All right? So, let's go into the rest of this. JBL says, I have no idea what happened and what's truth and what isn't. I'm not diminishing any of it. I'm just telling you about my personal relationship. That's all I can speak about. I had a personal relationship with Vince, and it was fantastic. He was very good to me and very good to a lot of the old guys he didn't have to be good to. All right? And Mark Henry talked about the same thing, about Vince being good to legends. Vince would call in 10 to 15 guys to get a payday for an event. Guys like Baron Von Raschke that he paid $1,500 just to show up on a Monday night or something. Just to give them money and put money in their pocket. I understand how people don't like this. But when you start asking people for their personal stories, this is their personal story. Some people had bad stories and bad interaction with Vince. Some people had good ones. I think when you start soliciting, you're going to get a mixed bag. Some people don't like him. Some people do. Some people were okay with it. Some people weren't. That's just like with every other human being on the planet. Every human being on the planet is a mixed bag. There are no angels. There's some people who, I guess you could say, they have the behaviors of a devil, but they aren't the devil themselves. I'm sure dogs and cats love them. I'm sure their parents love them very much. Brothers and sisters care so much. Even if there aren't really good people. So we don't know what's going on really. But I don't really have a problem with what Mark Henry said. I didn't have an issue at all with what Mark Henry said. Because I always have the same reaction. If you leave your house multiple times to engage in what you consider to be either demeaning or painful situations, you have to ask the question, why do you keep leaving your house? And then people will just come up with 100 excuses why you couldn't just walk away. It's like, unless you were legitimately brainwashed, which, we know can happen. It happens in cults. People are brainwashed into organizations, but usually when somebody is brainwashed, there's a very tight control over them. So much so they usually live in close proximity to the person who is brainwashing them. No one's going to brainwash you and then let you live with your boyfriend. It seems senseless to me, but I don't know. Again, we're waiting for all the information to come out. We're going to see in the end what's happening. But even if you can have video events doing this, I will still say that in every other case, that's like I questioned the Puff Daddy situation. Not because I was a fan of Puff Daddy, but because she was, the young lady was with him for over 10 years. Cassie was with him over 10 years. At least in that situation, he was in such close proximity that you would understand why she couldn't get away. He was taking her around the world, following her everywhere. She was being forced to follow him everywhere. Okay, I can see it. But then you have some of the R. Kelly stuff where you like, okay, You got surviving R. Kelly. You got some of these young girls. They talking about they were 16 hopping on flights to Chicago. I'm like, bro, what? Are you serious? And we taking this seriously? Some young girl hiding the ass hopped on an airplane or, borrowed a rent-a-car and drove to Chicago where R. Kelly was. That's crazy. Where was her parents? Aaliyah, where was her parents? But that's a mixed bag, because at least we know R. Kelly did have sex with some underage girls. He had sex with Aaliyah. He married her when she was underage. That's a fact. Now, this whole thing about R. Kelly having somebody handcuffed in the attic or something crazy like that, I'm like, bro, come on. I mean, I don't know about all that. I think just him having sex with an underage girl was bad enough, even if it was just one. You don't got to tell me he had girls chained to the radiator in the attic, or he's locking them in broom closets or something like that. Come on. You're not telling your side of the story. Why did you stay with him after that? Why did you stay quiet after he let you out? That's when you start asking questions. Because that's the R. Kelly question right there. As soon as the money started running out, all of a sudden R. Kelly raped me. He abused me. He beat me up. He locked me in a closet. He locked me in the attic. He locked me in the basement. He made me eat out of a dog bowl. He did all these horrible things to me. I never said anything about it until the money ran out. And yes, it's insensitive. And that's fine. Call it insensitive. I'm trying to get to the root of the matter here. And I'm trying to figure out what the facts are. And I know that we have a legal system that incentivizes people to just cough up money without question. Just give me the money and I'll go away, or I'll say something horrible. Again, my best friend in the entire world almost lost his daughter because his baby mama claimed that he ran over her foot in a Home Depot parking lot. She showed up with a goddamn boot on to court, claiming that he ran her foot over on purpose. And if it wasn't on video, he probably would have lost custody of his oldest child. I'm not putting nothing past these people. Somebody, if you make some kind of wild accusation like that, I'm gonna need some proof. I'm gonna need some evidence. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, because that's literally baked into the legal system. You can't just make wild accusations against people and then folks just believe it. Nowhere. Every step of our legal system, with the exception of shit like this, you have to prove an accusation. But now you could just write anything in an accusation and people just be like, well, you were accused, therefore it's true. Huh? We're not going to consider the source? We're not going to consider any evidence? We're not going to consider any counter evidence, any counter information? Well, especially if it fits what you already believe, which in Vince's case, it actually does. People believed Rita Chatterton all these years. And so if it fits into what they already believe, there's no reason to look for any evidence. There's no reason to ask any questions. But we've been through this all the time. They said R. Kelly had girls locked in the basement. They couldn't leave. They said he was trolling around McDonald's looking for high school girls. And y'all knew this and you didn't say nothing? You knew R. Kelly was trolling around McDonald's playpen in 1994 and you ain't say nothing? You waited till 2021 to talk about? Come on, man. Get real. Get real, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't have that around me. You know how disgusted I would be if I found out a dude was hanging around McDonald's looking for teenage girls? I don't give a damn if I knew that dude since diapers. That's sick. But the thing is, money. Money makes people change. But you also have to take into account, and this is something that this happens too. It happened in a very important situation that the WWE was involved in, where people were going to be paid from the settlement if they made certain accusations. This was a situation that I talked about it when they talked about it on Dark Side of the Ring. It's never discussed when they talk about the situation about why things turned out the way that they did. But there was a certain situation in which individuals were suing the WWF, but they were promising people a cut of any money that they got if they made certain accusations. And then they got caught doing it. And that's why they don't talk to members of their own family anymore. But you're not allowed to talk about that because we live in a world of, well, they're a victim. They're victimized. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's true. And in this case, it's absolutely true. But you still don't get away with trying to buy witnesses and fake accusations and fake testimony. That's fraud, B. We can't let you get away with that. And then people wonder why it turned out the way that it did. We got to be honest about things. That's all I'm saying, bro. I ain't saying Vince is an angel. Vince is the devil. But he might not be as bad as everybody's saying he is, by God. And then they say things in these accusations that are just laughable. She started talking about there being dildos named after wrestlers. That's just psychotic. And I don't know if it's true or not. It's provocative as all hell. It's one of the things that stands out in the whole document. Because it's absurd. You know, a lot of absurd things tend to stand out. You know? But this is going to continue. This thing ain't going to help. Mark Henry, people are not going to like him for saying this, but I think people who have a strong sense of justice are going to ask some questions. AJ3 says they just want the money, and where are they now? All the victims who came out screaming rape, where are they? Well, Rita Chatterton took money, and she's disappeared. I don't know what happened with the supposed lady at the spa or whatever. And so, but here's the thing: I think most people just kind of assume that there's some kind of coercion involved. There was a payday involved, when in reality, that's not necessarily the case. He probably was paying them because he didn't want this stuff coming out. Again, a lot of this stuff, I think they said, started happening around the time Linda was running for office. And you end up with a Stormy Daniels-like situation where people want to sell information to the tabloids, and that could damage the stock price. It could damage the WWE's relationships with other organizations like Mattel or some. That's like when Vince initially came back and immediately everybody started pulling their ads. Oh, we're going to pull our advertising. We're going to pull our sponsorships because Vince is coming back. That stuff could have happened a lot sooner if somebody would have gotten one over on Vince and decided they were going to run to the media and say, this happened to me. That happened to me. And so you pay them just to go away. But the problem is, once you get in the habit of doing that, people start thinking, well, you're only paying because you're guilty, instead of there's a myriad of other reasons why one would pay for you to go away, which is people pay for folks to go away because they don't want them talking to the media. That's the whole point of a non-disclosure agreement. And then if you want to pay people to sign a non-disclosure agreement, those are going to vary. So who knows how many legitimate mistresses he's actually had. And it's probably plenty. Especially since he was pretty open about the idea. I think when he did the Playboy interview in 2001, he talked a lot about having mistresses. But I spent 30 minutes on that. I didn't mean to. Let's talk about Eric Bischoff's new job. So a lot of AEW fans especially are starting to mock Eric Bischoff because now he went to work as a mortgage loan officer. He now works for Conrad Thompson. So Conrad says that Eric Bischoff doesn't need the job. He does it because he loves it. That's what he said. He says, Eric Bischoff says, Bischoff also noted that wrestling often comes up on his calls, so it feels like he has been able to extend his wrestling career. He says, wrestling comes up quite a bit on my calls. It's almost allowed me to extend my wrestling career. Is wrestling fans responding to Conrad's advertisements? And if a wrestling fan is calling about a new home or refinance, they're familiar with me. They're excited to get a call from me. I'm excited to help them. If I can save someone money every month just by seeing the bigger financial picture, that's extremely rewarding. It's a profound impression on me. All right. So this is interesting because the AEW fans are giddy. You know, the nice progressives. They're making fun of somebody for having a wage job, which is, you know, probably going to be a job where he's paid a percentage of every deal he closes or something like that. It's sales. And Bischoff knows a lot about sales. He worked in ad revenue and the Ninja Star Wars and all that. He's done this stuff before. He's pitched things before. He knows how to upsell somebody on a thing. But everybody thinks that, oh, he's so far removed from wrestling now, it's okay that we can mock him for having a regular job. You know? Which goes to show how far and how deranged a lot of these people are. I don't know. But I think part of it is that Jim Cornette put out there a long time ago that Bischoff was bad with money and constantly going broke and all this kind of stuff. And so now everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, he's broke. He's a grifter. Look at, the podcast ain't working out. Look at what's happening. He's a Hogan ass sniffer. My thing is, they were very excited when his previous podcast closed. I think 83 weeks the podcast closed up. No, it was Strictly Business. Strictly Business, the podcast closed up. It was the podcast he was doing with John Alba. And then they were throwing a party for that. Ha ha ha, Bischoff, he lost his podcast. Nah, 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 nah. He just launched another one a few days later. It's like a YouTube podcast. So he just launched another podcast a couple of days later, named after Tony Khan tweeting at him that closing down his Rudy Poo podcast or whatever was a wise choice. So now he named his new podcast Wise Choices. But yeah, Bischoff is cold calling people. That's not strong work. But this is a guy who's worked in television. He's worked in podcasting. He's done so many different things. There's nothing wrong with diversifying either. You know, sometimes people have multiple jobs, have multiple streams of income. I'm not going to knock somebody for having a regular job. Only time I can knock somebody for having a regular job is the young lady who worked at Sunglasses Hut while she was working for TNA. Like that was sad. That was absolutely sad. You know, that was tough. I forget what that young lady was. Who somebody probably knows who she is. It might pop up in my head. I think her face is in my head, but I don't got her name right now. But all the good troopers for AEW are extremely excited to make fun of Eric Bischoff for having a regular job. You know. Oh, it was Taylor Wilde. Okay, there we go. So BJ Bethel has come on the scene and is all of a sudden, you know, top tweet guy for AEW. So he's the one who tweeted it out that I saw it. He says Ninja Star Wars is split between crypto and selling mortgages at his age. Dude thinks he's a hot shit wrestling mind. Now he's selling mortgages because he couldn't make it in wrestling. Well, his wrestling heyday was 24 years ago. I mean, that's just how it is. I'm not going to knock a guy for trying to make a living, man. Eric Bischoff is in his mid to late 60s. It's time for something a little bit more stable. You know, podcasting is nice and all. People do like to hear his opinion. But when there's 1,000 podcasts, what can you do? There's not, and then when you get branded as a grifter or something like that, people tend to react in a certain way. There's not much you can do. So the AEW fans are making fun of Eric Bischoff for having a regular job. I hope they realize most of the people reading this have regular jobs. You know, most of the people that are laughing at him are, you know, wage slaves, I guess you could say. It's amazing to me how these folks are supposedly good, decent people, and they're mocking somebody for having a regular job. If anything, maybe we should mock him for working for Conrad. maybe that's what we should mock him for. Um, it is so. Rest in piss, bitch off. That's what one of the guys said. Rest in piss. He's not dead. He's not dead. This is a good comment here, and I want to make sure everybody hears this comment before I move to the next subject. Remember when everybody heard that Tony Schiavone was working at Starbucks and they all made fun of him until they realized he was doing what he needed to do to take care of his family, and then they all felt like assholes? Don't do that here. Eric doesn't need the money, but I do think he likes the challenge of learning a new skill and being good at it. More than anything, he likes helping people that need it. And pretty soon, I'll be sharing a story about Eric that proves that. And once again, you'll feel like an asshole. I don't know who this guy is. Is he like or is he a writer? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So I'm just going to say, yes, Tony Schiavone got plucked from the middle of nowhere. He had a podcast too. You know, sometimes these guys, you got to realize WCW was a long time ago. WCW was a long time ago. Some of these guys are going. There's only so many cons they can go to. There's only so many autographs they can sign. They're not going to. Well, Bischoff is being called to do documentaries all the time. He's being called to do pieces for WWE all the time. But what is he going to do in times when that stuff's not there? He has to have a steady income, you know, and he doesn't have a rich daddy, so he's got to go to work. And again, the guy's I don't. Let's check and see how old he is. I think last time I checked, he was in his mid-60s, maybe his late 60s. He's 69. My God, he's almost 70. He'll be 70 next year. Oh. So this ended up in Sports Illustrated as well, talking about Eric Bischoff being a mortgage loan officer. Remember, Rick Steiner got into real estate in 95. So when WCW closed in 2001, he was still doing that and he was wrestling on the side. He basically was like, man, I've been in the business long enough, close up shop, go do something else. Wrestlers have always had side jobs. You know, guys who own construction companies. Jerry Jarrett owned a construction company and a wrestling promotion. There's somebody else who owned a construction company too. I'm trying to think of it. I can't think off the top of my head. No, it was a lumber mill. But guys get into all sorts of things because they realize that wrestling is something you could do for 20 or 30 years and not something you can do forever. Very few guys are going to get those Undertaker and Magic Johnson lifetime contracts. You know, those Legends deals are pretty good, but they can't work. They still need other income. And since they're not going to get residuals from DVD sales because there's no DVDs being sold, they need to have money come from somewhere. A lot of people go into wrestling and it helps them fund whatever else they want to do because they can't wrestle forever. WG Phil says Kane, Rick Steiner, and even the women's champion Liv Morgan are real estate agents. Nikki Cross got her doctorate. Yeah. A lot of people go off and they do other things. You prepare yourself for a time when you're not wrestling. Now, the issue here is that Bischoff waited so late in life to do this. He's almost 70. And now he's in mortgages. It's not like it's 2003. Now, this is the one thing I will say. This is not 2 years after the closing of WCW. This is 20 years afterwards. You know, he's on his third podcast, and he needs more stable income. As more and more people pour into the podcasting space, there's going to be fewer and fewer listeners for everybody. That's just being real. Maybe if you're at the tippy top, like, Cornette, you don't got to worry about this kind of thing. You could just podcast for 4 hours a week and spend the rest of the time rubbing your dog's belly because you make so much money off podcasts, but not everybody is going to be that blessed. So I'm not going to knock him for having a regular job. So Conrad says, Eric knew that I did mortgages and he was looking to do a refinance. We took a stab at it, came up with a plan to find a way to help him. As he put it, changed his life. When we do a podcast together, he would heap praise on me for saving him a boatload of money. That's when Eric became enamored with the idea of helping people in a similar way. Conrad says, quote, Eric said to me, "What if I did it?" I was surprised. There is a class involving a test you need to pass that has a high failure rate. And a lot of people give up when they realize that's what it entails. To my surprise, Eric took the class on his own, scheduled the test, and got licensed. He didn't want anyone to know. He just wanted to learn. I think he loved the idea of helping people. It's been a way for him to give back to wrestling fans too. He says he doesn't need this to pay bills. He's doing it because he wants to. I know he played a bad guy on TV, but that was TV. This is real life. And the real life Eric Bischoff is hungry and motivated to help people. And Eric Bischoff himself explains that at one point his father was paralyzed in his 60s and his mom had to carry the financial load in the family. And he talked about how devastating that was for him. Growing up in middle class Detroit, lower middle class Detroit. So a lot of people are making fun of him for this. But for me, I'm proud of him. I think it's a good idea. Even though you're 70, it seems kind of weird to start a new career at 70, but I support the motivation, the hustle. So many people just kind of give up and I'm just going to sit around and collect Social Security. You're like, no, let me go learn a new skill. Let me go figure out how to make this thing shake. I don't like the idea of him being like 70 making cold calls. That sucks. But hey, what can you do? You need stable income. My God. In this economy, I should be a mortgage loan officer. Spend my weekends doing it. Hell, I could do it after work, my regular job. I mean, there's just so many people making fun of him, though. And all of these are supposed to be good people. Whenever somebody acts like they're your moral better, remember this kind of time right here where they're making fun of Eric Bischoff for having a regular job. You know? I don't know what to tell you. It's sad. But everybody's been saying how Bischoff is bad with money and all this kind of stuff, which might be true. It might be true. But if this is a necessary step for his life, I'm all for it. There's no point in him sitting around wasting away, or fill life with as much as you possibly can, man. Because I'm starting to ask questions about, needing a second income. So I'm in no way shaming Eric Bischoff for having a second income. He's got a couple of income streams. He's got 2 podcasts, and now he's doing mortgages. That's 3 income streams. That's not bad. That's not bad. Well, depending on how well his podcasts do, which I don't know. He said Eric ended up getting a Legends deal and has an action figure and featured in the 2K22 and 2K24. That's pretty good. WG feels that I would rather have Bischoff doing mortgage officer than going to the Indies, blading himself, and falling on barbed wire. We need more wrestlers doing that than going to GCW. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of cringe when I see Ricky Morton doing that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to say this because, again, I don't want to denigrate Ricky Morton. If he can get booked, fine. But when I saw like him kissing Effie and Effie humping his face, I'm like, bro, that's Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express. Like, who the fuck wants to watch that? When you see like Jerry the King Lawler in his 70s stumbling around the ring, we know he's doing it because he loves it, because he clearly has another job that helps him pay his bills. He doesn't have to do that stuff. But I was one that I get sad if I think about old wrestlers hanging on too long, and then they end up sliding down the indies, doing things that are embarrassing for money that, frankly, they shouldn't need. So this is actually more respectable because it's at least a guy saying, I'm just going to go and get a regular gig. I'm going to go be a mortgage loan officer. Why not? It's not illegal. It's not distasteful. He's not a stripper. He's not a porn star. It's not like he's 70 years old and decide he want to try to make it in the NBA or try to break into the music industry. So many people, they find stardom at different times of their life, and then they decide, you know what? That run is over. It's time to do something else. Besides, I've seen bigger fall-offs than Eric Bischoff. One such being Kwame Kilpatrick, former mayor of Detroit. After he got out of prison, he went and got him a regular job too. Hell, he couldn't work in government anymore. He had to go get a regular job. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to knock anybody for going to get a regular job. I just can't do it. He went and started working for a nonprofit, by the way, but this is not the first thing he did. It's just the most recent thing he did. So let's talk about this AEW Stadium show now, because I want to get ready to wrap this thing up. So I was wrong. I said on my AEW review, I do not believe that they were going to do a Texas Stadium show. It turns out that's exactly what they're going to do. So AEW announced Globe Life Field in Arlington to host AEW All In Texas 2025. It's a 40,000 seat arena, 40,000 seat stadium. So it's not the same stadium that was for WrestleMania. It's a smaller building. But 40,000 seats, if full, would be their North American record. So a lot of the access media are very, very excited. In your face. It's like you bought a building to host an event. The building is not going to turn away your money. So I don't see why that would be something to rub in somebody's face. But here's my question. I'm about to go straight to my conspiracy theory. How many of you guys been following WrestleNomics and their ongoing litigation with WWE? You probably haven't. You probably haven't been paying too much attention to it. But WrestleNomics has been in the middle of a situation between the state of Texas, WWE, and the Attorney General. So most recently, WWE sued the Texas Attorney General to prevent the bidding contract that they negotiated with the state from being released to the public, because WrestleNomics is asking for it because it's public information, and they're asking for what the bid was on the contract. WrestleNomics thinks that, the citizens need to know what kind of tax abatements or whatever WWE got for running shows like Royal Rumble and WrestleMania in Texas. I think the most recent issue has been Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble 23. That's the issue. So they've been trying to figure out what the real attendance is and all this kind of stuff, right? So WrestleNomics, of course, has been talking about, oh, we're just in the oversight business and all of this. Did I mention before that WrestleNomics has a friend that works in AEW? Just saying, is it possible? And as far as I know, WWE has not mentioned in any of their comments that WrestleNomics has a close relationship with their competitors, because one of the guys who worked for WrestleNomics now works in AEW. Is the whole thing not really about taxpayer money, but about trying to see where AEW might fit in this bid contract? Because if you give WWE, I don't know, let's just use any random number, $8 million, right? They can make that public. The guys who work at AEW now can see, oh, WWE can get $8 million, maybe we can get 3. Maybe we can get 2. Maybe we can get whatever. And try to use WWE and their success and or failure or whatever that may be in the case and the time to negotiate. Now, that's just a conspiracy theory. I don't think that that's actually happening. I don't know if, Thurston and all those guys are that damn dirty. Okay? I don't think they're that damn dirty. But why are they? Because the question is, they're fighting very, very hard for this. And they're constantly posting about it, constantly talking about it. WWE claims that this stuff is not a legitimate public concern, and that it's a lot of stuff. I'm usually on the side of transparency, so I'm usually on the side of just give the WrestleNomics the information that they want. So what if they shuffle the information to somebody else? Once it's public, it's public. Once you do business with the government, it's public anyway. I'm also against WWE getting tax abatements or the citizens paying for these events to come to their shows. These events to come to their town. But there's something significantly slimy about this, and it just doesn't feel right. Maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist. But WWE runs a stadium show in Australia. We started hearing about AEW wanting to run a stadium show in Australia. WWE runs a stadium show in Texas. AEW with a cold crowd. They have just run a slate of shows in Arlington recently. They just ran an entire slate of shows in Arlington. They did like an entire series of shows in Arlington. I want to look at what the ticket sales for those events were, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't big, because you look at the building, and even though it was small, it still wasn't full. And now they think they can run a 40,000 seat arena in Dallas. So this upcoming Collision at current is less than 1,000 tickets. That's where we are, and this is them running this same area. This is Arlington, Texas, and it's only up 254 since the last time. Since the last update. I'm sorry. I don't know what they got on the last show, the AEW Arlington show. But they did 4 of these shows, 4 or 5 of them. It was like a pretty much every weekend thing. It was kind of a residence. And now they're going to hold a pay-per-view there with a 40,000 seat arena on July the 20th, which was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. 1,238 tickets distributed. The setup was only 1,268. Less than 2,000 people for a live Collision taping. This was the first show of the residence. But I think the venue only hosts 1,300, which would be 1,300. So maybe the venue was just small. But if they started out with 1,200, and now here it is, who knows how many weeks later, and now it's less than 1,000. Got diminishing returns. They did Arlington just like they did Chicago. Just like they did Long Island. They blew it out. So now, all of a sudden, they're running a 40,000 seat arena, 40,000 seat stadium. 40,000 seat stadium. If they could run a bigger building for a Collision or a Rampage, they would. Now, to be fair, they've already taught people that Collision doesn't matter. They've taught people that Collision, you shouldn't care about Collision. Let me see if I can find, okay, WrestleTix, August the 10th. Oh, they got the whole thing here. They got the entire August, well, up to, no, they just got the residency shows. So here it is, July 20th, 2024, 1,268. That was for a Collision. They did the next week. They did a Death Before Dishonor Ring of Honor show. 1,157. The next week they did another Collision. They did 1,333, which will be the entire venue. And then the next Collision on August the 1st, they did 811. $811. And this is a small venue. And then, but this was 2 weeks ago. Okay, almost 2 weeks ago. Oof. And now they're going to run a 40,000 seat stadium in Dallas. It should do better because there's going to be bigger stars on the show, so it should do better. Again, they have taught people that Collision doesn't matter. So maybe that's why people are not coming out, because they're like, it's Collision. Who gives a shit? It's just FTR. Who cares, really? But the amount of people who are doing La Haktua to Tony Khan because they're like, hell yeah, they're going to run a stadium show in Dallas. I'm like, okay. What does it mean, though? It's next year, and their current venues are a quarter empty. Let's look at what the current setup is. Oh, their next show is All In. It's next week. Let's see if we can get. Do we got the ticket sales for what they did in Dynamite Wales yet? Let's take a look at that. Wait, that's Collision in Cardiff. and I don't think they got the ticket sales for that. Well, Reddit is saying the ticket sales have dropped to under 50 pounds, which means that it's probably not doing very well. But I don't see any WrestleTix data on it yet, so I don't know. It seems to me like they're really trying hard here to excite their audience. They're going right back to London the next year. So a lot of people think, oh, they've blown London out. Some people think that WWE is going to run a stadium show in London next year. And that's why AEW is coming to Texas, because WWE is going to run a stadium show in London. I don't know why they would think that. Wouldn't they have announced that by now, or they would teased it by now or something? Maybe. I don't know. But needing to give London a break, so you do 2 years in a row and then come to Texas and they go back. Okay. Okie dokie. They also changed it to now it's early July for All In. My question is going to be, I don't know, because we're looking at their Arlington numbers. It doesn't look strong in Texas. It doesn't. But then again, like I said, they've showed that Collision doesn't matter. They've been showing people that nobody really cares about Collision. But next year, things ought to be wildly different, because there's not going to be a Danielson next year. We don't know if Edge is going to be there next year. But then again, who knows? They might have Becky Lynch next year. They might have John Cena. No, they're not going to have John Cena. I'm kidding. They might have talked Bill Goldberg into wrestling next year or something. Who knows? Can't put nothing past anybody. We'll see how it works out. I've already been wrong, because I didn't think they would have the nerve to run a stadium show in the United States with as weak as their ticket sales has been. But Tony Khan he's got money. That's why I'm saying I think they got some kind of tax abatement in order to run this thing. Either that, or the city of Arlington wants them to run this event. We're going to see what they're going to do. We're going to see what they're going to do. Yeah, they might have Shane McMahon next year. Who knows what they might have next year? Next year is a whole year away. It's 350 some odd days. No, it's actually more than that. Maybe 340 some odd days, because it's early July next year. So who knows what could happen in the year? Maybe they get hot in December and they can cruise to 40,000 seats by July. But if we're looking at their domestic ticket sales, the Grand Slam ticket sales have been abysmal. They don't even talk about it anymore. Right? They're not even talking about it anymore. Let's look at the ticket sales for Grand Slam. Do they have it up yet? Because last I heard, they got less than 5,000 seats, and in the same building that they used to get 20,000 in. Is this it? Yeah. Wednesday, September 25th. This was posted today. Whoa, just a few minutes ago. Oh no, it's this morning. As of right now, AEW Grand Slam, which was one of their big events, again, 2021, they put 20,000 people in a building in Arthur Ashe Stadium, right? Danielson versus Omega, right? 20,000 seats. It was amazing. It was electric. This year, 3,548. 3,548. They went from 20,000 people in this same building, and they only run it once a year. And it's down to 3,548 right now. And the whole setup, even if they sold out their entire ticket base, is less than 5,000. It's only 4,806. So if they sold every ticket that they have already made available, it's less than 5,000 tickets. Let me look and see what the exact number was in 2021. By God. Oh my God. It was 18,424. So pretty much the entire facility. Pretty much the entire venue. Pretty much, I was right. Pretty much 20,000 seats. How did they do this to themselves? How did they do this? And then look at the card for Grand Slam for 2021. I had to look and see. Kenny Omega versus Daniels. Malachi Black versus Cody Rhodes. Sting and Darby Allin versus FTR. Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho. MJF versus Brian Pillman. That was the entire show. And then the Rampage. CM Punk versus Powerhouse Hobbs. Adam Cole and the Young Bucks versus Christian Cage and Jurassic Express, I'm sorry. Then there was the Lucha Brothers teaming with Santana and Ortiz to face Private Party and the Butcher and the Blade. Ugh. Okay, so Rampage wasn't as strong. The Rampage card kind of sucks. But 20,000 people in the venue. Just 3 years later, boy, they lost 15,000 fans in 3 years. What was it last year? Let's take a look at what it was last year. What was AEW Grand Slam last year? What was it last year, brother? Let's take a look at what the ticket sales last year. And these are regular Dynamites. So these are like super Dynamites, right? So last year, they did a somewhat respectable 8,636. Respectable number. 8,000, about 9,000-10,000 seats. They had to downscale the venue to only 11,000. So they didn't even max it out, but they got close. They got close. But now they're far away. Far away. Humble 85 says something very intelligent. He says a lot of Americans don't have disposable income to go to wrestling shows. There's some truth to that. There's the economy is very bad. That is true. Inflation is kicking everybody's ass. That is true. But WWE is killing it. WWE is killing it. And while the cost of peanuts and hot dogs and merchandise has skyrocketed, they're not in front of mostly empty buildings. AEW is just cold. It's a really, really, really cold business right now. And I don't know if they got what it takes to heat it up, if they got what it takes to fix this. Low Key '07 says Texas doesn't seem like the type of place that would enjoy AEW type of wrestling. Well, the hipster fan is all over the map. If you build it, they will come. That's kind of the general idea that Tony Khan has. If you have the big venue and you just throw the show, people will come. At least you hope. WG Phil says, "What's going on with Lauryn Hill? She seems to be tweaking this month." Well, she's tweaking every time. There's always a Lauryn Hill problem. Leith LZ says, "Random topic, but were you ever a Hulkamaniac? I was never a Hogan fan. I recognize his popularity, but I never got how he maintained it over so many years." Yes, I was a proper Hulkamaniac. I mean, of course, you watch wrestling for about a year or so, you become interested in. Again, I started watching wrestling in 1990, so that was near. Hulkamania wasn't quite dead yet, right? Hulkamania was strong, but I became a big fan of Randy Savage almost immediately. Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker came in the next year, '91. I was a big fan of him, but yeah, I was a fan of Hulk Hogan. I had action figures, had his wrestling buddy. Because I mean, it's hard to not be a fan of Hulk Hogan. You have to actually be trying. If you were a kid and you weren't a fan of Hulk Hogan, you have to actively try. I think it's like being a kid and not being a fan of John Cena. It's like you have to be trying. I've known toddlers that have been huge fans of John Cena. You have to actively be trying to not be a fan of a superhero at the moment. So I'll spend my last couple of minutes on. I really don't have anything else. Like I really don't have anything to talk about. But I will say, Jesse Ventura, he did a interview on MSNBC where he told that old story about Hulk Hogan snitching him out when he was trying to create a union. And I got to tell you, I wish somebody would tell Jesse Ventura, if the boys really wanted a union, Hulk Hogan couldn't have stopped you. If the boys wanted a union, they go to form the union. People have talked about unions off and on decades. Francine just claims that somebody wanted her to help them form a union, but nothing ever came of it. We know Zelina Vega talked about a union in like 2020 or 2021. Nothing came of it. We know Andrew Yang talked about it. Nothing came of it. It just seems like a lot of bluster to me. Humble 85 says, to keep it accurate, SummerSlam was not a sellout, and WWE is cutting on American house shows. I can understand cutting house shows, but they did a huge number. It was like, I don't know what it wasn't. I don't know. I don't remember what they announced, but it was like over 30,000. It was over 30, and this is in a working class city like Cleveland. And Cleveland is like middle America. Definitely not a lot of money floating around in Cleveland. Definitely not a lot of money floating around in Cleveland. So I know the local economy needed that boost of a lot of people coming in from like Cincinnati and Detroit, Chicago and Indianapolis, etc. But they're right to cut house shows. They need to. In this economy, you got to cut house shows. You just can't. It's unsustainable right now. The boys did not want a union. Yeah, that's the thing that Jesse Ventura doesn't say. The boys didn't want the union. They still don't want it. That's why Jesse Ventura could go on TV and talk about it, and it's just not going to happen. If people wanted a union, they have it. Nobody can stop them, and there's no reason to stop them. If they wanted to have a union, they'd have one. They don't want one. Ike the Don says he got into wrestling in 2009. John Cena and Jeff Hardy was his Hulk Hogan's. That's absolutely correct. If I was a young kid and I was about your age, I probably would too. I probably would have been a huge fan of Jeff Hardy and Hulk Hogan and John Cena. Jeff Hardy is straight up cool. Jeff Hardy is the Randy Savage of that era. Unfortunately, he screwed it up, but he has all the potential to be one of the biggest stars of all time. Speaking of somebody screwing it up, this is going to be what I'm going to end on, because this is something that was humorous. And I was going to do his own video on it, but I decided not to because there's not really much to say. But Matt Kemp, who formerly of The Bump, he has a podcast where he does nothing but talk trash, right? So apparently he's talking about how Roman Reigns had heat with Matt Riddle over Matt Riddle basically saying that he could beat Roman up in a real fight, which is a very Matt Riddle thing to say. And he was telling a story about how they had to leave, Matt Riddle had to leave before Roman did a video interview. He was in the studio, but they didn't want Roman to see Matt Riddle in the building, so they waited for him to leave before Roman was on screen, because Roman apparently had heat with him over Matt Riddle talking about he could beat Roman up in a real fight. So this Matt Riddle guy, I remember that comment too. I thought he was working, and I didn't really think much of it. I still don't think that much of it. But Matt Kemp is pretty much saying that, Matt Riddle, he rubbed Roman Reigns the wrong way, Brock Lesnar, Seth Rollins, Goldberg, and who knows how many other people, because he's a mark for himself. He barely got in WWE. He was talking about he was going to retire Brock Lesnar. Oh, he could beat Goldberg up in a real fight. He could beat this guy up in a real fight. And I was like, man, why is this guy such a mark? What business are you in? I could beat you up in a real fight, bro. Like, what business are you in? And I'm like, this guy talks like he was a UFC heavyweight champion. He was like 8-3. And he was not like the best UFC fighter of all time. Like it's one of these guys who, like, I did a little MMA and now I can beat everybody up. It's like, you ain't Anderson Silva or nothing like that. If you was like George St. Pierre, then maybe I'll be like, yeah, you might not want to fuck with him, Roman. It's Matt Riddle. Yeah, you can fight, but he got a puncher's chance. He's got a puncher's chance. It's just the stupidest thing in the world to get into heat. It's a stupid thing to get heat over. It's the stupidest thing to get heat in the locker room over. You're in the wrong business. None of these dudes can care whether none of them care if you can fight for real. They do not give a shit. And you trying to tell everybody, I can beat you up for real, bruh. It's like, what is this guy talking about? More importantly, why is he talking about that? And it seemed like he just had the wrong attitude. And this is a guy that a lot of people stood up for, because he had so many troubles, so many issues with drugs and girls and all kinds of stuff. And he made it toxic on himself. He was barely in the company, trash talking Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. By the time he was fully in the door, he had heat with Seth Rollins too. It's like, what is going on? Why does he need to be that way? It's nonsense, bro. And I'm definitely surprised he lasted as long as he did if he had heat with everybody. I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did. But I'm certainly in a position where I'm like, okay, I get I get that he's proud of where he comes from and what he can do. He spent his life training in martial. He's been a wrestler now longer than he was an MMA fighter. He's almost 40. He's like 38 or something like that. He hadn't had a real fight in years. I think it's been at least 10 years since he had a real fight. It's not like, he washed out of wrestling because he got fired from WWE. He immediately jumped back into, PFL or Bellator and started winning fights again. It's like he's still a pro wrestler. He's just on a smaller stage. He's on like MLW now. Go back into UFC and go back into MMA. Well, not UFC because Dana White hates him. But go back into MMA if that's what you want to do. And it's an interesting thing that he's so interested in fighting people who don't have mixed martial arts experience. Like Roman doesn't. If Roman had mixed martial arts experience, he wouldn't be talking like this. Brock does, and there's no way Matt Riddle would have beat up Brock Lesnar. For starters, Brock Lesnar is 2 Matt Riddles. All right, I think Matt Riddle fought at 170. Brock had to cut weight to make 265. Brock beat up Randy Couture. He would have painted the walls with Matt Riddle easily, without much trouble, even with diverticulitis. But when you have these people who have like legitimate backgrounds, it's almost as if it's almost like the Daniel Puder situation, where you feel like you have to prove something. You got this macho dick measuring contest where like, I can beat you up for real in a real fight, bro. And everybody's looking like, that ain't what we do. And who cares if you can? Like, you're the one in this room that been training since he was a kid or something like that. Most of these guys were football players and stuff. Like, you won't put on the pads and go, and try to do what they do. So, like, keep it a bean. Stay in the ring. Keep it focused on the ring. But I also think that he was kind of working, but he's working with people who ain't working with him. And I think that's what Goldberg said to him. Like, we're not working together. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you're hyping up a fight that's not going to happen? You're hyping up a match that's not going to happen. That's the silliest thing about this whole thing is he had all this potential, but he had all these personal problems. It's kind of embarrassing, So now he can enjoy wrestling. What the fuck is this? Kojima. And is he even still working in Japan? I don't think he'd be working in Japan. He's not even over there doing the G1 as far as I know. I think he worked a couple of New Japan shows and then that was kind of it. Now it's just MLW. He fell off the face of the earth. He's not even in TNA. Like, how far did you fall? Well, I guess it depends on what you think MLW or TNA is more important or more relevant in today's wrestling world. Some people would argue MLW is more important right now. Some people will argue TNA is more important. Yeah, I mean, trying to play that game is really kind of foolish, if you ask me. Trying to work with guys who ain't working with you is kind of foolish. Trying to play tough guy is kind of stupid. You gotta, even if it's true, and a lot of people are like, he's not lying, it's true. Maybe it is. But so what? If that's what he wants to do, let him go fight some of those other guys and go to Bellator. Go to PFL. That ain't what they do here. Or put on some football pads and go out there and do what they do, because that's what Roman Reigns did. He played football. He didn't do judo or kickboxing or anything like that. Of course you're going to be better at it than him. That's the stupidest fucking argument I ever heard. I'm better at you at something you've never done. Who cares? I'm pretty sure I'm a better chess player than some of these people. We're never going to play, so it doesn't matter. It's crazy that the only person that liked him was Randy Orton. That's probably because Randy Orton's a natural shit starter, too. So that's pretty much it. I was going to do a video on that. I decided not to. I'm just going to throw that on in here for the people who hung around. And probably, I don't know if I'm going to do a video tomorrow or not. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But as of right now, I thank everybody for stopping by. I appreciate everybody's attendance. I appreciate everybody that's listening, whether you're on time or whether you're late. Thanks everybody for your time. I'll talk to you guys later. Ike the Don says was my favorite Rey Mysterio in 2009 when he was the IC champ. Oh, that's a hard question because I do like that Rey Mysterio too. But I think I'm partial to WCW Rey Mysterio, like the first couple of years, like 97, 98. I think that's when he was, he was incredible. And you see him for the first time, he was incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, I like that Rey Mysterio too. 2009 when he was, in the mix, IC champ. I think he won the world title again the next year. That was pretty good too. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.